Okay, this will be for the worksheet SSS and SAS congruence. They want us to state if the two triangles are congruent. If they are, state how you know. So the possible answers on this worksheet are going to be SSS or SAS, or if you can't prove it, you can just write not congruent. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3 possible answers for this worksheet. All right, let's look at number 1 here. We see we have 2 triangles and a side that is shared by both triangles. Okay, this side is shared by both. So I am going to mark that side congruent to itself. Okay, they already used the 2 tick marks here for this side, so I'm going to use the 1 tick mark. All right, and now looking at what we have here, we have right angles that match. Okay, we don't really have to mark them congruent because all right angles are congruent. Notice that the angle is in between the 2 sides that are congruent. So we have side, angle, side. On the other triangle, side, angle, side. So that's going to be SAS. All right, like I said, the angle is in between the 2 sides that are congruent. So the A is in between the 2 S's. All right, let's look at number 5. Just like problem number 1, we have 2 triangles with a side that is shared by both triangles. Okay, so I'm going to mark that congruent to itself. They use 1 mark here and 2 marks here, so we need to use 3 marks to distinguish it from the other sides. All right, so I mark that side congruent, and now we can see on both triangles we have side, side, side. On the other one, side, side, side. All right, when you have 3 sides, that's just going to be SSS. Now remember, there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 problems where neither of these work. Okay, and then you're going to have to write not congruent if you can't prove it. All right, next up we have ASA and AAS. So the possible answers are ASA or AAS, or if you can't prove it, then you just write not congruent. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3 possible answers on this worksheet. All right, problem 1, we see we have 2 triangles here that share this side right here in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to mark that side congruent to itself. I will use 1 notch because there's no other side that has 1 notch. And now we can see what we have here. Notice the side is in between 2 angles that are congruent. So we have side, angle, side. On this triangle, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Angle, side, angle. And on this triangle, angle, side, angle. The side is in between the 2 angles that are congruent. So that's going to be ASA. The S is in between the 2 A's because the side is in between the 2 angles. Okay, problem number 3. Notice right here, we have this X shape. Okay, if I can highlight it here, we have this side here and this side here making the X shape. Okay, remember when you have an X shape, the angles across from each other, this one and this one, are congruent. Okay, because those are vertical angles. So I'm going to mark these. We already used the 1 curved mark here. So I am going to use the 2 curve marks in order to mark these 2 angles congruent. All right, and the reason these angles are congruent is because they are vertical. And now what do we have? Angle, angle, side. Notice the side is not in between the two angles. Over here, angle, angle, side. Again, the side is not in between the two angles. The order you go around the triangle doesn't matter, okay? Whatever you need to do, you can go counterclockwise or you can go clockwise, whatever you need to do, okay? But either case, on either triangle, the side is not in between the two angles. So the only other option is going to be angle, angle, side, all right? If the side was in between, the S would be in between the two A's. Okay, please do not write SAA. I know it seems like the same thing, but really, we don't write it that way. All right, so just write AAS when you have two angles and the side that is not in between. All right, and make sure when you have vertical angles like we just did, then you look for that X shape and you mark the angles congruent that are across from one another. Okay, make sure you mark those angles congruent. Vertical. Okay, I just wanted to show you one example of what it looks like when they are not congruent or you can't prove congruence. So this is number 2 on the page that is for SSS and SAS. So let's take a look at number 2. All right, as usual, we have this side that is shared by both triangles. So you want to mark that congruent to itself. So they already used the 1 tick mark. We have to use 2. All right, and now let's see if we can prove these congruent. On the top triangle, we have side, angle, side. Okay, the angle is in between the two sides that are congruent. So this one is side, angle, side. But on the bottom one, we have angle, side, side. Okay, there is no theorem for two sides and an angle. And in order for it to be side, angle, side, the angle would have to be in between these two sides. The angle would have to be right there. Okay, but that angle is missing. And since that angle is missing, we can't use side, angle, side. It has to be the same postulate on both triangles, okay? The same theorem or postulate. So because this is not SAS, then we can't prove it, and we have to say not congruent. All right, so if it doesn't match on both triangles, you can't prove congruence, and you're going to have to say not congruent.